Okay, good morning Year 7 and welcome back to music. I hope we had a nice time doing drama. Did any of you talk to the other half of Year 7? Do you know what we're doing?
Yes.
Cuckoo.
It is right there, Prairie, very good. Yeah, so we're going to be looking at learning to play the djembe a little bit, and that sounds quite easy, doesn't it? Learning to play a drum. It sounds like, oh yeah, just hit it and it'll be fine. But there is actually quite a lot to learn in terms of technique, and probably the most important thing about this set of work that we're going to do this term is rhythmical accuracy. We talked about it a bit last time when we did the performance of 500 miles. And some of us struggled a bit to start with getting the piece together in our groups. And it wasn't until we were able to play rhythmically accurately that we were able to do the performance. Okay? So we're going to look at how important that is and also learn a bit about the djembe. We're going to start off learning the rhythms for the piece called Cuckoo today. So two aims. One, to learn the techniques for the djembe, and second aim, to learn the main rhythms for the piece called Cuckoo. Bit of a funny name, isn't it? Say Cuckoo.
Cuckoo pose.
Try that again. Cuckoo. Let's try it without being daft, because it's important. This isn't a joke, okay? This is the name of the piece we're learning, and we're going to learn a little bit about the djembe as well. So just somebody read me the names of the 5 C words we always talk about. One person. Ella, can you do it? Yeah.
Collaboration, creativity, cultural awareness, competence, commit.
Excellent. Okay. So those 5 words we always talk about, and they're extremely important in the performing arts. To start with, we're looking at cultural awareness, and we have to approach that with a sense of understanding. So even though some of these things might sound a little bit funny, and some of the words we use to help us learn the rhythms might sound a little bit funny, but they're not jokes. They're there to help us be accurate. Okay, so let's approach it with that sense. Otherwise, if you start being, in the primary school, we can get away with like having a fun and a laugh when we're doing some music, and we can in the senior school at certain times. But when we're learning rhythms, the accuracy is what's critical. And there's no, if I giggle half the way through a phrase, that's going to ruin that whole phrase, isn't it? It's going to be not so good. So we've got to be very careful and approach it in the right way. All right, let's start off with a few facts about the djembe. Oh, that's a picture of a djembe. Here is a djembe. This is a djembe. Spelled slightly strangely, isn't it? There's a J just after the D. So the djembe looks like how it's spelled, but you always say it's djembe. Like that. Okay, great. So let's have a little bit of background, a few fun facts about African music. Maybe who's sitting close to it? Dawson, do you think you could read us this first sentence?
Oral traditions such as storytelling, music, and poetry are passed down through the generations of families of the griots. Now, griots.
That's right, griots. Can we try and say griots?
Griots.
Excellent. So griots, they are the sort of artists of this particular African tradition, and they would be the people who taught people how to play the djembe, also told stories, sang and danced as well. Who'd like to read us this second? Sugen, do you think you could do this for us?
The djembe is the most popular African drum and is thought to have come from Mali among that's almost certainly, but by the 13th.
That's right. So if you can't see maybe at the back, hopefully you can, this is the continent of Africa. Mali is this big country here, and it's called Mali after the Malinke. The Malinke were a tribe that settled in this particular area. And we think this is where the djembe originates from. It's an old instrument, it's from the 13th century. So let's see if we can work out, a quick maths question, how many hundreds of years ago approximately was the 13th century? Let's not shout out. See if you can work it out, because if you say 700, it sounds like that's right, but when we say 13th century, what do we mean? Does someone have the answer? It's between something and something, yeah.
It's between 13,000 the year 13,000 and the end of 13,000.
Yeah, so it ends at 1,300 years. When does it start the 13th century? Yeah? That's right, 1200. So how many hundreds of years old between something and something When did the djembe originate? Yeah.
600 to 700.
Close, but not quite right. So how long ago was 1200, the year 1200? 800, or 818 to be precise, isn't it? Okay, so it's between 800 and 700 years old, so it's a very old instrument. Does anyone know when the violin was kind of established as the violin? Yeah?
14th century.
Nope, a little later.
15th.
16th century. The 16th century is when the violin and the cello were kind of finalised in their very similar design they are today. So the djembe was finalised a long time before that, over twice as long in fact. Okay, great. So that's just a little bit of history. Remember, it's from East Africa. We think it's from Mali. It's 700 to 800 years old. A little bit of background. Okay, so let's have a look at what they can be used for in performance. This is quite a nice video I'm going to show you. Malvin, could you just switch the lights off there? This is a performance from a higher education diploma in Singapore. And you'll see there's a group of people playing the djembe. There's a few other African drums as well, but I want you to focus on the djembe. And you'll notice they're dancing as well, and there's quite a lot of movement, because that's quite traditional in African drumming. We're mainly going to focus on the musical side, but it's nice to watch how it can be used and how international it is. You can go to anywhere in the world and you can find people doing African drumming. It's a really popular art form. But the main thing I want you to watch for is I want you to watch for the different ways that they play the djembe, because that's what we're going to talk about in a second. The way the hands are used on the drum, because we're going to look at that in a bit of detail today. And I want you to think of, if you can, any words that might describe the music. So I'm going to go through 4 main musical characteristics of African drumming with you in a second, and I want to see if maybe you pick some of these up before I show them to you. So let's watch the video. We'll watch a couple of minutes. Do enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, this video, and yeah, hopefully you'll get a good idea of what it is to play djembe. There we go. Just a little example of what some really good djembe playing looks and sounds like. That was fantastic. That sounded really good, didn't it? It sounded really interesting. Did anyone disagree with that? Did anyone not enjoy that?
No, it's just the mic though with that.
Yeah, it's not the best. I downloaded it from YouTube, and so the sound quality is not amazing. But I think we do get the idea of how much fun playing djembe can actually be. Okay. All right. So a few points, and we'll talk about these a little bit more later on. But even in that short section, we heard all 4 of these musical features. Okay, and we're gonna have these, hopefully. Certainly, these 3 are gonna come in every piece that we do, and this one, when we do a bit of improvisation, maybe If you can put a cross with them, I'll be really impressed. Anyway, so call and response, we've done loads of times. So if I'm going to say call, I want you to say response. Call.
Response.
Call.
Response.
So it works just like that, only it's in a musical way. So one person or a group will play a phrase or a rhythm, and the other group would answer that with a similar phrase or a similar rhythm. And that's call and response. I'm sure you've done it loads of times. I do it all the time. Who was learning trumpet with me last year?
Justin.
Do you remember I always used to do something like bum, 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 and then you had to play it back? Call and response. And traditionally, the djembe would have been taught similarly. There would be a lot of call and response learning. In fact, the griots would never have written anything down. So they wouldn't have a whiteboard, they wouldn't have a book. They would do it all by performing, okay, and playing back. Okay, great. So improvisation, we've done lots of this before, making it up as you go along. Have you done improvisation in drama?
Yeah.
Same thing, only we're looking at doing it rhythmically this time. Syncopation. Can we all try and say that? Syncopation.
Syncopation.
That was good. Say that.
Syncopation.
Syncopation. Go.
Syncopation.
All right, very good. So, syncopation is emphasized notes off the beat. Put your hand up if you've heard that word before. Syncopation. Who's ever heard the word synchronized? Okay. Syncopation in music is kind of the opposite of that. Because if I have a beat, a syncopated rhythm would have lots of notes that are not on the beat. Lots of those notes, you know, you try to control yourself, because that's a little bit disruptive, isn't it? Yeah. A syncopated rhythm has lots of notes in that aren't off the beats, and that's what makes it interesting. And if you're listening carefully, you probably noticed in that last example, all of the little solos that the djembe players did were all syncopated. There were lots of notes that were off the beats. And that's another thing I'm going to ask you to try and add in when we look at improvisation next lesson. Okay? Alright, great. So let's have a look at the djembe itself. Fancy reading this to us, James?
It's traditionally made from one piece of carved and hollowed wood with a goat skin attached to the top.
That's great. So here's the djembe. Originally, this is a plastic skin, but before we had plastic, which has only been around for about 100 years, people would use animal skin, usually goat, to make the skins of the drums. Luckily, we don't need to, so the goats are safe. We can use plastic skins. And you'll see, actually, a lot of the djembes we have a replacement. They have a metal brace here, because it's a little easier to maintain. We do have a few that are like this, that have the pattern of knots and weaving, and it's this kind of pattern to hold the drum skin in place that was important in making the djembe possible as a musical instrument. All right, great. Okay, so there's 4 different ways of making sounds on the djembe, and it's all to do with exactly how we place our hands. So I'm going to show you about a minute's worth of another video where there's a really clear explanation from a really good djembe player. Because, you know, I'm okay at djembe, but I think you'll probably hear it clearest if you listen carefully to this next little example. Then we'll try and do it as a class. Okay? So listen carefully. Let's have a listen to a little bit of this. Okay, listening.
This is how to sit when you're playing a djembe. First of all, for ladies, for girls, I advise that you don't wear a skirt, you wear trousers. Everyone would need to sit on the very front of their chair with their feet flat on the floor. The djembe then just sits...
Okay, just watch for now, we'll try it in a second.
If your djembe is like mine, at about the same height as your knees, leave it just standing on the floor. If you've got a very small djembe, which is much shorter, you are more than welcome to pick it up and balance it between your knees like that. However, if your drum is the same height as mine or taller, please leave it standing on the floor. However, a lot of the sound comes out the bottom of the drum, and we're not going to hear that if we leave it standing flat. So what we need to do is tilt the drum ever so slightly, and then, of course, the danger might be it might fall over in it. So you need to give the drum a good hug with your knees, and preferably cross your feet around the front of it as well, and then sit up with a straight back. We should all be able to do that, and your drum shouldn't fall over.
You haven't got it.
There are 3 ways.
Just relax, just enjoy the video.
First way is right in the very centre, and you use all of your hands in the very centre. Notice how I made sure my hand bounced off. You probably want to imagine that your drum is like a trampoline. Don't let your drum stay stuck to it. Doesn't sound great. Bounce your hand off. That's called a bass in the very centre. Near the edge, we have the tone notes. To play tone notes, put your hands fairly close together. We'd like the last 2 joints of each finger on the drum, and your fingertips pointing the opposite side of the drum. You want to have your thumbs tucked out of the way, and again, make sure your hands bounce off.
Here's a different sound.
Instead of imagining it's like a trampoline, you may wish to imagine that your drum is really, really hot, and your hand naturally flinches away from it. Create the right sound. The third way to play a djembe is called a slap. There are many different ways to play slaps, and many djembe players disagree about the best, most authentic way to play it. I've discovered in my teaching, the best way to do it is to have your hands in a completely different position from the tones, so that as the teacher you can clearly see which students are aiming to get the slaps and which aren't. So to get a slap sound, if you put your hands on the drum, just like playing tones, then move your hands a little bit further apart, then bring them into the middle a little bit more. So it's kind of like your knuckles around the rim of the drum, and your hand's now that shape, and you've created a little crease in the centre of your palm. That crease should be on the rim of the drum. You'll probably find it easiest to get slap sounds if you spread your fingers out a little bit, but be very careful, because if you're going to hit the drum here, this bit might hit the edge of your hand, edge of the drum, sorry, and that would be really very uncomfortable. Again, my hands bounce off. So a good djembe player will always have a very clear difference between his bass, his tone, and his slap. Also, you can get what's called a flam. That's where you play with your hands almost at the same time together. For a djembe, normally, flams are played in a slap position.
Okay, great. So you can see, it always makes me laugh when people clap videos, because, nobody is here who made that video. So I think you're applauding me for pressing play, and I think that's a big deal. Anyway, so the first task, once we get the djembes out, I'm going to ask you to practice making the different sounds. So I'm going to try and show you them now. Let me just bring my chair out. I'll put them up on the board so hopefully you can see, because we are a bit limited. Do you want to just pop the lights back on, Marvin? So if you can't see at the back, can you just shuffle around so you can see as best as you can? This area here. Can you see okay there, William? Okay, good? You okay, good, Joe? Alright, great. So, yes, if you need to move a little closer, that's okay. Can you see okay there, Justin? Can you see okay there? Alright, good. Just move your chair across, I think it'll be fine. If you stand, you're going to walk into other people.
No, just stay still.
Okay, great. So, shh. Djembe. 4 techniques. The first thing we're going to practice is trying to get the different sounds out of the drum. Okay? So the bass sound is a nice easy one. Flat hand, right in the middle of the drum, but like we just heard, we have to bounce off. Okay? That's a nice clean bass sound. If I don't bounce my hand off, I just get that. And there's no ring, it's dead, isn't it? So I've got to bounce my hand off. And that's, I don't want to talk too much about exactly how I'm going to assess this, but there's a few things I'll mention that we need to be aware of from the start. And being able to bounce our hand off is really important, because if we don't get that nice ringing sound, we're not quite playing djembe correctly. So do be aware of that. So the bass sound is in the middle. The tone is right at the edge. So what I'm looking for is a nice, like, high-pitched ringing sound. So you can hear the difference. It's a really clear difference there. Okay, so bass, tone. The slap, I like to think of the slap as a bit of a cross between the two. So I do bring my fingers a little bit further into the drum, like you can see here. The tone is right on the edge. The slap should be about halfway along, and I want to get a bit of that ringing sound and a bit of the bass sound before. So something like, so I get bass, tone, slap. And they should sound really clearly different. And who wants to remind me, how do I do a flam again? What do I do for a flam? Yeah?
It's basically the slap, but it's flat in your hand is flat.
Not quite. It's the same as the slap, but I do, James. Yeah, so that's the slap. So I have my hand curved for the slap. The flam, I'll give you one more try. Ginger? Didn't hear you because we got people being a bit noisy. Say it again. That's right. So it's two slaps, but very quickly together. So a flam is like two slaps, but like that. So two slaps together. Boys. Okay, great. So what I want you to do when we get the djembes is I want you to practice it so you can do this pattern: bass, tone, slap, flam. Bass, tone, slap, flam. Bass, tone, slap, flam. In a nice steady beat, 10 times in a row. So again. So we get to practice each one of those techniques, and I want it in a nice 4-beat pattern like that. So, right, let's talk about getting the djembes out, because we haven't done this as a group yet. And I'll tell you, let's just talk about health and safety a little bit first of all. Put your hand up if you think the djembe is a very quiet instrument. Put your hand up if you think it's a very loud instrument. Okay? The answer is it can be both. It depends how hard you hit the skin, doesn't it? Now there's a lot of us in here, and if we all get our djembes and we all play as loudly as possible, we're probably all going to leave here with a headache, and to be honest, there is a bit of a risk of, a small risk of hearing damage. So it's not a serious risk, it's just if everyone plays really loudly for a sustained amount of time, then we are going to be making a lot of noise. Okay? So I'm always going to ask you to play the djembes at a medium volume level when we're working in a large group like this. Never try and play it as loudly as you can, because you will suffer for it later, not only in your ears, but if I'm hitting things very hard with my hands, what are my hands going to be like after 30 minutes?
Red.
Yeah, red and sore, so it's for your own benefit, okay? Alright, so when we get the djembes out, I'm going to ask I'm going to ask a couple of people, and there might be some pat points in this for you. I'm going to ask a couple of people to be like djembe classroom monitors. Yeah? Oh, here we have a visitor. Hello! Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple of people to be djembe monitors, and I'm going to ask them to hand the djembes out, and also to stack them. Can you see how they're neatly stacked at the back there? I'm going to ask you to stack them at the end of every lesson. Okay, so Nika, you can definitely be one. Would you like to be the other? Okay, great. So if you two go stand at the back. And when, I'll probably ask us to go a row at a time to pick a djembe up. When you do get your djembe, I'm going to ask you to spread out a little bit as well, because we're quite close together. So like, for example, when I say back row, when I say back row, get your djembe, do it, but then once you've got it, move your chairs out and away from each other a little bit so you've got some space, okay? Girls, we saw in the video, skirts are a bit of a problem for playing djembe. It is okay to lean it on the floor. If you can angle it slightly away from yourself and you're comfortable to do that, that's great. Okay, better if you can do that, but not essential. Okay, so what do we do once we've got our djembe? What are we trying to do first of all? You can remind me. And do I just hit it as hard as I can?
No.
No. Medium level? Sorry, yes, did I ask you to discuss that? What's the problem, Liz? So, once we get our djembe, practice based on slap flam. I'll give you a couple of minutes to practice, keep it at a medium volume level, and listen out for when I tell you to stop. We'll be ready to move on and have a listen to how we do. So, back row, can you get djembe first, please? Once you've got it, practice the bass tone slap flam. Just take one, they all work in the same way. So, sit down, spread out. So, Angie, do you move your chair right to the back? Okay, second row. Can we get our djembe now, please? So, that's cool. The other way. The other way. let's try that together. And one thing I'm going to, I said I mentioned a couple of things I'll be looking for when we do the assessment of this. Tempo, not speeding up, is an